Hello, War of the Visions fans. I'm Jackie Fox. It's Monday morning after my Halloween week arena, and what I have for you today is an excerpt from my Halloween video. I ended up having a lot to talk about because it was a combination of like 40 minutes of vertical horror and maybe another 30 minutes of talking about getting the Halloween units to top tier in arena, both from the perspective of trying to do this with Alaya and Lucio, and also kind of Exia, as she had a pretty good bonus as well. And it just ended up being really long, so this ended up being a pretty concise cut of just how I feel about these characters' ability to perform at the very tippity top tier of the meta, and I just thought it made more sense in its own video. As an Earth player, I've been playing with and against the newest Halloween units for about a week now, and I have some key takeaways for both of them. And let's start with the newest Halloween Alaya. Halloween Alaya, in a lot of ways, is in the right place at the right time right now to counter our current meta. She has an incredibly high chance of being able to confuse people with her limit burst, which is able to hit 2 targets. So this can shut down the majority of a person's team, although sometimes it also means that the first confused character attacks the second, unconfusing them, but whatever. It's still devastating. And with a high chance to proc, this gets around a lot of resistance. So unless you have other ways of building your resistance, 25 isn't always enough to counter this, even though you can make it a bit less likely to happen. And then, and a lot of characters have this, but it's especially important for her, I feel like smart players are defensively using her main sub-job. The only person I think I've seen doing this, I want to say it was Realm, who was in first place last week, so excellent competitor, conqueror, and they're using her main sub-job. And the reason that you would do this is it doesn't do a tremendous amount for you offensively, but offensively this is a character that's really great into a lot of meta magic characters. Because let's think about the way that this version of the meta has played out. We started with a ton, I mean a ton, of very strong physical units. June the Spring Celestial and Ashen Mont came out on the same week for us here in Global, and that was followed up with Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, which was 4 more physical characters, one of them being free. But on the other side of that, we saw 2 even incredibly powerful, like standard setting magic units in Shurika and Gilgamesh. And both of these characters are incredibly strong to physical. That's what has put them at the top of the meta right now. The best units in the game, with the exception of them until recently, have been physically based. They have good matchups into themselves, or at least Gilgamesh has a good matchup into Shurika, and Shurika beats a lot of other things. So they're both very powerful characters, but they just don't match up well in the magic, and until recently there haven't been next generation magic answers to them. Sadly, of course, still has some issues with Shurika, but he can definitely lay into Gilgamesh quite quickly. And then we have Exia, who has a great matchup with both of them. I've seen her like repeatedly sleep Shurika, and she can lay into Gilgamesh like nobody's business. She really can break their healing power quite quickly, which is important for both of those characters and a lot of meta characters. There's a lot of reasons that Exia is good into these characters, and she has a bonus unit this week, so it... And hey, she is also a big bonus unit this week, so it's worth pointing out that she's good into these things as well, and for a lot of the same reasons that Halloween Alaya is good, these 2 units are good as well. We're currently seeing a cycle of magic characters that also are pretty good into magic for a variety of reasons. For Halloween Alaya, it's status. It's the confusion. Confusion can stop spellcasting in its tracks. And against 97 faith characters, as high of a chance as she has to proc this off, it's basically guaranteed in a lot of cases, especially if they aren't running any resistance at all. So you're guaranteed disruption to the opposing team, but what's better is her damage is actually pretty solid for a 70 cost unit, and she has good chaining. She has a lot of the same kit as Ashen Mont in some ways, while also being a support and just not having that follow-up hit. But she has the ability to break down people's unit attack resistance and just keep pummeling them with repeated single target attacks, picking out 2 characters at a time. But the defensive trick that she has is her ability to cast Toad on 2 targets at a time. Now, this is a pretty weak chance compared to what I was just saying about Confusion. And she won't use this in a majority of matchups. But right now, if you're playing Arena and you have a Lightning team, it's going to get picked on by Earth. That's just the meta right now. And the best thing that you can do against the Earth evasion meta is allow her to turn the entire opposing team into a bunch of frogs. Of course, I've already mentioned this at least twice, but I did see I'm sad at this point that I didn't record this fight, but I saw my entire team turn to frogs versus Realm. That is what encouraged me to run Toad resistance for them. And then she just won't use the skill at all. She won't waste her time on it. She'll probably just buff herself and try to survive. But, because of her ability to do good magic damage and the pretty open weakness that both Shurika and Gilgamesh have to magic damage, Exia is better into it, but she's a water unit. So the 3 out of 5 or 6 of the last strong magic characters get countered pretty well by Halloween Alaya. It's actually surprising how good of a character she is into a variety of matchups. And Lightning has been down bad for a while, in my opinion, and there haven't been a lot of things to fix that. I mean, it has a really strong matchup into a lot of things thanks to Ramada right now, but she's not alone quite enough to right the ship. Luciel is also a top tier contender, but really I think they needed Halloween Alaya because that 3 unit team is really strong right now, and probably the best that Lightning is doing, and the best that Lightning has done in a while. They now have a modern, good team to put together. But it's not quite beating Earth. And Evasive Lucio is pretty amazing. I've got to give this guy a lot of credit, especially since I made a video explaining why I didn't want to pull him. I will re-explain my logic, and that was that as an Earth Evasion player, while I fully accept that this is actually a good pull and a recommended character for people who aren't doing Earth Evasion right now but want to get into it, want a strong character to get yourself in with, he's great. And if you have a little bit of money to spend, the option to get him at 120 for 2,000 paid viz is really remarkable. If you want to get into Earth Evasion, this is the best character to do that with. And his kit through and through has really good stuff now, and maybe I didn't pay enough attention to him at the time, or maybe a lot of this stuff has come with updates, and especially like his LB has really improved, I think, his chances a lot. And I'm not going to be able to remember everything that this guy's kit does, but in terms of status, he now has the ability to, or he always has, this is part of his main job, AoE sleep. But he also has the ability to reduce people's accuracy. Now, this is important on a team like I'm using him on, and like a lot of people are using him on with Sodley and Ashen Mont, because both of those characters can blind, and that's helpful. But there's no real, well, there are ways. You debuff resistance, debuff weakening are ways to deal with this, but there aren't like resistances other than that, of course, that you can put up to accuracy down. And if you can get blinded and accuracy downed, those effects stack, and you will be as inaccurate as you possibly can. This is kind of a great combo for even breaking down a high accuracy team's ability to hit you. Not that it's going to line up like this very often, because he's got some pretty great kit, especially when you include his duelist sub-job. Now, his main buff, I'm not even going to talk about it because it's always going to be on, and he's always going to be using this first. I think it's called Axeman's Adaptability. So good. Physical shield, just a ton of other things as well. His axe is also non-negotiable. This is one of the signature weapons that is really well built for a specific character. In one part, this is the most important part for me, even though this axe does other things that make it worth having, but really one of the big effects is that you get an HP drain effect when your HP is below 50%, which can stack with other forms, but one of my biggest issues with him is that he didn't have the ability to equip the blood sword when he came out. Now, the Bloody Labris is basically its own kind of a critical blood sword. It heals maybe a little bit better, but it also only heals half the time, but crucially in the important half. This gives him the ability, especially if people can't hit him reliably, to heal back by doing damage when he's injured, knowing that he'll get a turn or two off from damage. Maybe makes him more sustainable. It's also worth pointing out that if you're fairly confident in his evasion or you have the right vision cards for him, you might be able to switch the Maximilian over to him, because this is going to give him healing up until the point where he can turn Maximilian's effects back on. But it's also worth noting that Basadli, you can give him an HP drain effect from the beginning, which is really cool, and he just loves all Basadli's effects. He has an insane amount of luck to add to his evasive potential, but this also adds a lot to his accuracy potential, and with a good accuracy buff like Sadly can provide, he can become quite an accurate unit as well. And I have the feeling that this is really important in evasion versus evasion matchups, even though I've been a little scared to test it. But we'll see what we can find out about that before this video is released. He also, and I think this is in part his newer upgrades, or maybe when he came out, I didn't find these things to be as important as they have become in the years since. He has the ability to give himself healing power down on hit as a part of his kind of opening buff pattern. But in addition to that, especially when you have Duelist, he has two different skills that also decrease healing power. This makes him, in some ways, he can't do the same type of AoE shenanigans that Cypher can, but he can stack healing power down on several of his skills to really impressively break the healing power of his opponents. So he can break your healing power. He also heals back incredibly well himself, and in kind of a new way that can be really synergistic with the Maximilian, but, you know, he's just quite the powerful character in a lot of ways, and he wasn't the beginning, but he was the beginning of the low-cost, really strong seasonal characters, because previously seasonal characters, and you know, he's no exception to this first part, but seasonal characters have been a way to show off new jobs. And then the problem with that is that the character, even if they seem really cool at first, generally don't have a lot of flavor, so they kind of just lean into whatever that job is. Which means that as newer characters start to come out with that sub-job, they've got like 2/3 of their capabilities just in a sub-job, you know what I mean? So why would you use this older character over them? But man, Lucio has a lot of flavor. His LB now also gives him a re-raise as well, which is something that was missing in his kit, in a way that he can stunt on Cypher. Cypher don't have no re-raise. Cypher don't have courage. But Lucio does. And while Cypher does have evasive potential and also a lot of luck, I believe, because he's also, I think, kind of a more accuracy built character as well, and luck is just synergistic to both of those, he's nowhere near as evasive as Lucio is. And as surprising as it is for a 70 cost unit to currently have that title, especially one that's 1 year old, even with Sunil in the game, he is the best evasion character by far. I see Sunil used a lot, and I see them, they're really scary on the same team with each other, because now you have two characters that you have very little chance of hitting. but he's definitely the better character. If you want an upgrade from Sunil, for 2K paid viz, this guy can be yours. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and click that bell so that you don't miss a video. Also, if you are interested in the Halloween video I talked about earlier, I have a spider cut. If you're more into the horror aspect of this, if this answered your questions about the Halloween units, and you just want to see my horror concept for War of the Visions and Halloween this year, check out the spider cut. It's under 30 minutes. It's a good time. But if you want the full experience, and even a bit more of this story, as there are some parts that were cut out, or in the second part, there's basically a whole epilogue to the spider cut that exists only there. And that will be available on Halloween. Right now, part 1 is up as I'm recording this. And the spider cut is coming up later today, but it will already be up by the time that this is released. And I want to give it some time to breathe and get some views. But if you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and check that out. And if all of that seems really cool to you, you want to encourage people like me to make more content like this, then feel free to support me by clicking the link in the description. You can buy my books to encourage the channel, or you could also click the link in the description and donate to the channel, either once or on a recurring basis. Help me pull, help me pay bills, whatever you can afford. Even if it's just $1 a month, if 20 people did that, that would actually be kind of nice for me. Even if it was just $20, it would feel like this channel wasn't a dead end. Thank you for watching. With all that being said, I'll see you in the next one.